Welcome to another episode of Preparing for the Unexpected. We like to talk about things related to crisis management, business continuity, resilience, anything that helps you, your organization, or your community plan for, prepare for, and overcome adverse situations. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, please feel free. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Alex Fullick there. I'm really easy to find, and I do respond to everything I get. Today, we're going to be talking about resilience, and I'm really happy to have our guest on. She was a keynote speaker at DRJ Fall last year, or was it spring? I forgot.
Spring, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, DRJ Spring. Oops. Sorry, Bob Arnold. Getting that wrong. But I really enjoyed having Anne as a guest. She joined our live broadcast. So now I'm really happy to have her on the show. Anne Bonney. Anne, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Alex. It's great to be here.
It was great. We had a fantastic chat. James Green and I got to chat with you after you did your keynote, because unfortunately we were at the broadcast desk and we couldn't attend, but we had a great chat afterwards. So I know a little bit about you. Can you take a minute or two and tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got into what you do?
Yeah, sure. When I always start the story with getting home from second grade in the spring of 19 or something. And my parents sat my brother and I down and said, we're moving to Saudi Arabia. And this precipitated kind of a life of change and a life of walking into unfamiliar situations. And so when I was sort of at the end of my corporate career and saying, what do I want to do next? Because this isn't working for me anymore. I was like, let's change it. Let's go learn more about change and help people deal with the resistance to change. And so that's what I do now. I run around doing keynotes and workshops on uncomfortable things, basically, including how do we build up our confidence in our resilience.
Well, it's interesting. See, we're off script, and I haven't even asked one question yet.
Sorry.
You mentioned, the difficult, uncomfortable topics that sometimes people have difficulty dealing with. Mm-hmm. So the only way you could actually get better and to move on from those is to actually deal with them.
Is to get uncomfortable. That's I call it dancing in the discomfort zone, because if we're, whether we're leaders and we're leading a crisis situation or leading humans, which is generally a crisis situation in itself, or we're just trying to deal with our own life and our own stuff, we've got to have that, be able to dance in the discomfort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the only way you can move forward and deal with it. And what's the expression? Get that baggage or monkey off your back, so to speak.
Yeah. Exactly. Or be able to just carry the monkey and not have it stealing your bananas.
Yeah. Let that monkey be your friend now.
That's what we call beat the metaphor.
That's right. Now, we're going to talk about resilience today. So my first question to you is, how do you define resilience?
Well, I mean, resilience in itself is the ability to bounce back. And humans as a species are resilient. And so I really like to talk about mental toughness rather than resilience, because mental toughness is what I just alluded to a minute ago. It's confidence in our resilience. When we need our resilience, it's like, oh boy, this is hard. This is uncomfortable. Here we go. But when we have mental toughness, it's, wow, this is hard and I got it. And it's that comfort and confidence in, this is terrible, I'm really uncomfortable, and I believe I'm going to be okay. I know how I'm going to move forward. Or even if I don't know how I'm going to move forward, I know I'm going to be okay.
Isn't that also self-awareness then? Or situational awareness, or combination thereof?
The situational and self-awareness don't imply an understanding of one's ability. It's just, well, I guess, it doesn't imply the strength of ability. It just implies the understanding of your own ability, which you may not believe is very strong. You could still be very socially aware. Self-aware. So really that mental toughness is self-awareness of a strength in the ability to deal with uncomfortable stuff.
Well, how do you go about finding that self-awareness then? Because a lot of people, what is it? I just had an example. Oh, alcoholics. You can't. I think there's something that says, and I may have the expression wrong, but you can't help someone who won't admit it to themselves. And that
Right.
I've heard that from a couple of alcoholics who said that until they admitted it, they couldn't move on. So is that a part of that? Or like, how do you go about doing that?
So you're getting into a much, much deeper pool of
Mm.
of self-awareness. I mean, when we're talking about alcoholism, generally there's some sort of escapist situation in there where I'm trying to avoid either admitting that there's a problem or the problem that the alcohol is covering up. There's a lot more underneath there.
Yeah.
But you're right. Some people will go along their life, even if it's not an addiction situation, thinking, I'm okay. Let's just keep going. I'm okay. I'm okay. Everything's okay. And until they admit, holy crap, I'm burned out. I'm
Mm.
stressed. I'm overweight because the cortisol is building up and I'm about to have a heart attack. Oh, wake up call. Boom. Now I'm suddenly self aware. So, without going that far, it's the way to get in front of it is paying attention to your own physiology in certain situations. And one of the things that I talked about in my keynote at DRJ was admitting your challenge with something, being able to pause. We're such solution focused people. We want to jump to what we're going to do. We want to jump to certainty.
Mm.
And the key is before we jump to doing something, pausing and saying, all right, wait a minute. How am I feeling about this? All right, I'm kind of bummed. This is a little scary. I don't know what's going to do. But the cool part about pausing to acknowledge our emotional situation, which is part of being human. You know, a lot of people are like, no, I'm good. I know my dad is a great example. I don't, you want me to talk about the feelings? But the fact is, having feelings is part of being human. Sorry if you don't like it. And the cool part about it is by pausing to say, what's my problem here? Where do I have a challenge? Why is my heart racing? Why am I, feeling resistance or feeling my shoulders up around my ears? By pausing, you're shifting your thinking from the reactive part of your brain around to the part with the logic. And you start to say, wow, yeah, no, this is hard. I'm scared that I don't want this to fail. Even just taking a minute to recognize that can help you to be able to work through that in a positive way versus just tamping down, as I call it, like tamping down lava in a volcano. That only works for a little while, before
Mhm.
it takes out a small village. So, and that's the same thing that these emotions can do. So pausing and saying, all right, wait a minute, this is an uncomfortable situation. How am I feeling about this? And just having that little conversation with yourself, it can take 60 seconds, but it shifts the way you're thinking about it and it can start to build that self-awareness.
Do you need something to happen, something negative to happen for that kind of reaction to occur? Or can
Ideally, no, but a lot of us humans do. And even then, they say that behavior change, significant behavior change in humans, is tough to come by, even when one of those negative situations happens. So it's really a matter of tune into yourself, tune into, all the conversation these days about mindfulness.
Mm.
It means being in the moment and saying, where am I right now? Not in solution mode, and I'm not saying you're not going to get back into solution mode, but by pausing for that second, it can really start to shift the thinking and say, you know what? Yeah, I can't take a break right now, but I'm going to need to take a break soon to get away from this, to have my outlet.
Yeah.
Because without an outlet, we can have a really tough time. And that's when it starts to build out.
Is mental toughness a combination of mental, physical, and emotional health? Like, do you need a combination thereof to really get this mental toughness?
It helps. I mean, obviously, everything is connected. The physical, the spiritual, the mental, the psychological, it's all connected. So ideally, for the perfect situation, yes, it all lines up. Does it ever as us as humans? Rarely. We don't need all of the pieces to line up in order to find that mental toughness, but it does help.
How do you go about, let's say you're emotionally okay, but you've got terrible physical health, or you've got uh, um, you're reactive. When something goes wrong, you just kind of fly off the handle.
Mm.
how do you bring all that together? Because we're all different and we all respond differently, but how do you get it so that we're kind of able to look at ourselves and say, hey, look, as you mentioned to your expression, pause for a moment and take a look at yourself. Most of us don't do that.
Right. Yeah, it's the whole check yourself before you wreck yourself, right?
Yeah.
There's this thing that I call emotional energy. And it's basically the stuff we need to be able to hold it together on Thursday afternoon at 4:45 when we're trying to get to our kid's soccer game and somebody calls an emergency meeting about a meeting that we had the day before.
Mm-hmm.
It's in that moment when you're in the crisis, and how do I hold it together so I don't blow up at people, so I can be socially and self-aware, and I can lead this thing effectively. Emotional energy, if you think about it, if you've ever been on a diet and you've got this eating plan, and in the morning you have your egg whites with spinach and a coffee with no cream and sugar, and then at lunch you take out the salad and you eat it with just the vinegar because you're on your diet. And then by the time you get home, you've got the box of pizza with the cheesy bread and a pint of Ben and Jerry's. We're ready. It's because as the day goes on, our emotional energy gets eaten up by every decision we make and every difficult situation we have to deal with, even positive or negative. All of that stuff eats away at our emotional energy. And so if you've ever felt hungry, that's basically it. But we sometimes feel hangry completely unrelated to food, and that's the flying off the handle you were just talking about. That means you're out of emotional energy. And so by having that awareness of when you start to feel like, oh, I'm pretty touchy right now, maybe you just need a walk around the block. Maybe you just need to go grab an apple, grab some water, little things. You're not trying to solve all the world's problems. I'm just trying to get through this next meeting without flying off the handle. And so understanding yourself that way and what kind of fills that emotional energy tank a little bit can really help you hold it together and actually react in a mentally tough way.
Does time play a factor here? Because you touched on it a couple of times as you were answering. You've got your morning where you've done great. You did your lunch where you did great, and dinner, you're out the window. And then I mentioned earlier that sometimes we just jump and we don't reflect. We just jump to conclusions or fly off the handle. Is time a part of something we should consider? It's like, hey, I don't need to respond right away to that. So does time have a factor in here for mental toughness as well? Because you can't go from that to this in no time unless you're flying off the handle, really. So does time?
Yeah. So when you're out of emotional energy, you're not able to take that pause, right? You don't have the capacity. And it's harder to be able to say, all right, hold on a sec. I just fired off this angry email at Alex because I was mad at him. Let me just put this in my drafts, come back to it in 10 minutes. Without emotional energy, I'm not able to make that. That's more of emotional intelligence. I'm not able to make that emotionally intelligent decision to not shoot out that angry email. Or not fly off the handle, whatever it is, right? If I don't have the emotional energy, I'm not able to make that decision. And so I would say that it doesn't necessarily relate to mental toughness because that's more of a confidence that you have in yourself and your abilities, but you're not able to capitalize on all that mental toughness when you're out of emotional energy. So they kind of play into each other. And my time reference to morning, noon, and night only is that morning, assuming you've just come off of a night's sleep, you're fresh, you had breakfast, you've got a full tank of emotional energy. Whereas by the end of the day, it's starting to run out. So understanding, how do I refill my tank?
Well, your example there about an email, I've done that many, many times and still do. I will write what I feel because it actually helps me get out my frustration. I don't hit send, and I make sure that when I do type it out, there's no name in the text. I remove that just in case accidentally hit send, right?
No email. I think that the send button should be disabled by a certain pressure on the keys, Because when you're mad, you're like, and it should say, in 15 minutes, we will ask you to reconsider.
Yep. I do that all the time. It gets my frustration out by saying what I want to say. Put it in the draft folder, go back to it 10, 15, even later in the day. And then say, okay, Now I'm calm. Okay, here's what I really want to say. And it comes out much better. And it actually helps me, but my response to that person who maybe is frustrating as heck is actually getting a better thought out answer. And I'm actually helping them by doing that.
And you're likely to get better results from them in the future because of your emotionally intelligent response. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Even though
Apparently Lincoln did that too. He used to write out, not with email, but he used to write out the angry thing, put it in his desk drawer, come back to it to the next day, and reconsider how he wanted to phrase that.
yeah, even though I probably swore 100 times beforehand, but
Yeah.
no one knows it.
No, exactly. And that's a great outlet. You know, we were talking about outlets. We're talking about having an outlet to be able to build that emotional energy. Sometimes writing that angry email is an outlet, you know, because you're getting it out of your system. Journaling, it's the same thing, right? You're getting it out of your system so you can say, okay, cool. Now I can think clearly. Moving the thinking from the reactive to the logical part of your brain. Now I can think clearly and say, all right, that felt good. And that's not how I want to respond to this.
On that note, we've come to the end of our first segment. Today, we are talking with Bonney about mental toughness, and we will be right back. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.